This is TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast, and I want to let you know that the State of the Saints podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. Over 2 million men worldwide have joined the movement for all their below-the-waist needs. Engineers for the last 18 months have perfected the greatest hair trimmer ever created, the Lawnmower 3.0. The third-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents thanks to their advanced skin-safe technology pioneered by Manscaped. You can choose the Lawnmower 3.0 as well as other items by going to manscaped.com, and you can also save 20% by using the promo code StateOfSaints. That's manscaped.com. Use the promo code StateOfSaints and save 20% on the Lawnmower 3.0 as well as other Manscaped items. That's manscaped.com.
Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And we have a special guest here on the State of the Saints podcast. We have two-time Super Bowl champion. We also have the host of the podcast, All Things Covered, with Patrick Peterson, and also a contributor with CBS Sports, Bryant McFadden. B-Mac, what's going on, man?
Man, thank you for having me. It's an honor being here. Let's talk some Saint football.
Yeah, man, no doubt about it, man. There's a lot of changes going on with the New Orleans Saints, man. No doubt about that. You know, a lot of changes. We know that Drew Brees has retired. He made this announcement about 2 weeks ago.
Yep. And
now, you know, the Saints are moving forward. But before we talk about the Saints moving forward, let's talk about Drew Brees, man. I don't know. You didn't have. I don't know if you had those many chances to play against him. I know you were up in the AFC North, but
yeah.
What did Drew Brees mean to you as well as the NFL? Excuse me.
I think in totality, his overall career, you know, he was the ultimate underdog, to say the least, in being able to defy, you know, the odds that were stacked against him. And the reason why I say that is if you go back and look at the beginning for Drew Brees, you know, being a high school quarterback in the state of Texas, putting up outstanding numbers and only having 2 offers.
Right.
You know what I mean? He was overlooked then. Then, you know, with those 2 offers, deciding to go to Purdue. And when you look at a powerhouse football-wise, Purdue has never been really known to be a powerhouse. You know, when you look at some of the other blue blood football programs in college football.
Right.
But he balled out. You know what I mean? He put Purdue on the spotlight, to say the least, because of how well he played. And then the numbers he gave you at Purdue, you know, only warranted him going into the second round, was overlooked again. And then going to the Chargers, the then San Diego Chargers, as a second-round pick, eventually becoming a starter. And what people forget is before Drew Brees actually got hurt in San Diego, they had already drafted his replacement.
Right.
So they were already preparing for life after Drew Brees, even though he was more than a serviceable quarterback in San Diego. He was a competitive guy. So he was being overlooked again. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you know, having that devastating shoulder injury, you know, just getting over that adversity, climbing over that hurdle. And then if you look at the one of the biggest, most fortunate signings and one of the more devastating decisions with Miami and New Orleans forever being tied to the hip, to say the least.
Right.
And it's funny because on my podcast, All Things Covered with Patrick Peterson, a few weeks ago, I had Nick Saban on.
Right.
So I had an opportunity to talk to Nick Saban, and I asked Nick Saban, if you guys signed Drew Brees, how different would your professional coaching career have been? Right. And it's safe to say he basically said he wouldn't have left, because if you don't have a quarterback in the National Football League, you don't have a shot. We all know that as fans, right?
Right.
And in that situation, he broke everything down for us. If you haven't checked out the episode, you can see us on YouTube, or, you know, find us anywhere you can find podcasts. But he broke it down and said he wanted Drew Brees. Dr. James Andrews, a well-known doctor that, you know, is known throughout professional sports, told the Dolphins Drew Brees' shoulder would be okay. He had more concerns with Dante Culpepper's knee.
Right.
But Miami didn't take what Dr. Andrews said to heart, and they decided to sign Dante Culpepper and guess Drew Brees, the New Orleans Saints. And Nick Saban said something I didn't even know. He said they had a deal in place for Drew Brees.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a deal in place for Drew Brees. So
Wow.
that mishap by the Dolphins became one of the biggest fortunes for the New Orleans Saints in a time where they were looking for hope. And it's funny because I trained in New Orleans. I trained in New Orleans with Tom Shaw.
Okay.
In January of 2005. So that was pre-Katrina, before Katrina actually hit. Wow. So I got a chance to experience the environment there. I trained in New Orleans. I stayed in some apartments in Kenner, right outside the city, so in Kenner, Louisiana. And just being in New Orleans and then seeing how things changed dramatically after Katrina, it was like, will they ever come back from that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And
outside of a lot of prayers and hard work, the city came back. But you know who also played a part in the city coming back?
Who's that?
Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
I mean, that is true. I mean, that's true, B-Mac. You know, I can remember, you know, like I was saying off the air, I was born and raised in New Orleans. And I remember when the Saints weren't that good, you know. I remember, like, you know, yeah, man. I mean, it is a true thing. You know, I remember when they used to sell Saints tickets at a gas station, you know. So there's a lot of, you know, a lot of history that was not good with the New Orleans Saints. And then when Drew Brees, Sean Payton showed up, I mean, they changed the narrative. That's why, me personally, you know, like you have teams that, you know, that have been snake bitten. Then you have like this star that brings them, you know, to prosperity. I look at like the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I feel like, you know, that one championship that LeBron won with them, I think it trumped like the two that he won with Miami. I feel the same way with Drew Brees. I mean, the Saints did not have a rich history in winning. And when this guy got here, he changed the narrative about it. And, you know, I think that people need to give him more credit for that greatness, you know, because, I mean, that was not a good franchise. And, you know, I heard you speak last week when you were talking about Drew Brees. You know, there's a lot of talk about, you know, him not being a top 10 quarterback. You got a lot of people, you know, that's trying to, you know, put, I don't know, disclaimers out there. Yeah, he did this, but he didn't win this. Like, to you, do you think that Drew Brees should be mentioned among some of the greatest quarterbacks of all time?
No question. The misfortune that Drew Brees has that's standing in front of him is being in the same era with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady.
Yeah.
It's safe to say, if those players, Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, played in any era, they would be the top two quarterbacks that you talk about.
Right.
Because they were that good. You know what I'm saying? So for Drew Brees, it's hard because you look at his numbers, you look at how consistent he's been. He's probably one of the more accurate, efficient quarterbacks ever. You know, being able to throw multiple 5,000-yard seasons in a time when that was not such a thing, and just doing it with whoever.
All right.
Think about this. Throughout his professional career in New Orleans, Michael Thomas is an outlier at the wide receiver position.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now, he has exceeded the expectations, but he is a beast. Marcus Colston basically was undrafted.
Yeah, that's true.
I think he was a 6th rounder, a 7th rounder.
I think it was a 7th rounder. Yeah, he was.
Yes, but clearly he exceeded the expectations because he put forth the effort and the hard work, but then he had a guy throwing him the football that was a go-getter. You know what I mean? So Drew Brees never had the luxury like a Peyton Manning had, where you had two Hall of Famers, you know, lining up opposite each other that you can throw them the football. And then a Hall of Famer in the backfield in Ezra and James. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he was still able to be competitive, relevant, and put up outstanding numbers. So, yeah, you got it. Why wouldn't you put him in that conversation with the all-time greats? But like I said, my initial statement, I think, should be considered the ultimate underdog. Yeah. Because he always kind of kept getting overlooked. And even right now, like you said, some people saying, well, you can't talk about him as being one of the all-time greats. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, you know, some of the things I hear, you know, he played in a dome. And I'm like, Peyton Manning played in a dome all those years, right? You know, and I mean, I just feel like people just need to give him more credit. I really feel, for the exception of Reggie White, I think you have to say he's the greatest free agent, you know, of all time. You know, like what he did for a city and how he just basically just became an all-time great. from moving from San Diego to New Orleans. But let's go ahead and talk about the future of the New Orleans Saints. The future is right now, man. The Saints have got to make some changes. They had to lose a lot of guys due to salary cap issues. And also, there's a new change out of the guard. I mean, 15 years of great quarterback play, and now you're transitioning from Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill. And Jameis Winston signed a 1-year deal with the New Orleans Saints, one year, $14 million. But B-Mac, what do you think about Jameis Winston? A lot of people can't get that 30 for 30 out of their minds. They can't forget about, those interceptions he threw in Tampa. And people feel like, he can't resurrect his career. But in your opinion, can Jameis Winston change the narrative of what people think about him?
No question he can change the narrative. Because one thing that he has currently around him in New Orleans is structure.
Right.
He didn't really have consistent structure in Tampa. You got to realize Jameis went number 1.
Yeah.
And when you go number 1, you're going into a bad situation.
Right.
Good teams don't pick that early in the draft.
Right.
Bad teams pick early in the draft. So he went into a very, very bad culture. Then the amount of head coaches he had to play under, the amount of offensive coordinators he had to play under. So just the structure wasn't there. And I think one of the biggest issues that Jameis had, he always felt like he was forced to play the best he can play for them to have a shot of winning.
Right.
That's pressure. And it's funny you mentioned Jameis because on my most recent episode, All Things Covered, he's our guest.
Right.
And he broke down some of the things that he went through in Tampa. He broke down how excited he is to be a part of the New Orleans Saints organization. I didn't know this, but he said Drew Brees was his childhood and still is to this day his personal favorite quarterback.
Wow.
You know what I mean? He said Drew Brees is his guy. His wife is has been a New Orleans Saints fan her entire life based on what he said. So he's personally invested into the organization. And he just said being able to work and learn under Drew Brees for that 1 year, being able to learn under Sean Payton has been wonderful. And he's excited about this season. You know what I mean? He said he had an opportunity, before signing back with the New Orleans Saints to go elsewhere where he pretty much would have the job. You know what I mean? To say at least is what they were telling him. He said no, he didn't take that offer because he wanted to come back to New Orleans and continue to work on the things that he's trying to put in place there for that organization and under Sean Payton.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm always a firm believer in guys can, change the narrative. I just think that, like you said, he was the first overall pick. He went to an organization. You got the first pick in the draft for a reason. I mean, plain and simple. I mean, the New Orleans Saints, I feel like this can be a match made in heaven. And I feel like Jameis Winston has done all the necessary things to try to change that narrative. Like he lost weight. He got, really serious about his workout routine. He got
the LASIK surgery.
Exactly. The LASIK surgery. So this tells me right here that this guy actually cares about, his football career. I mean, he could have easily went somewhere else. I mean, it's not like this guy lacks talent. I'm pretty sure if his agent could have, got him in another situation where he could have made more money, but he was willing to come back to New Orleans on his 1-year deal too. Like I said, to go out here to try to prove to everybody that he does belong in the National Football League. But they are going to have a quarterback competition, and you have Taysom Hill. B-Mac, where do you see Taysom Hill's role with the New Orleans Saints? Do you think that Taysom Hill, could legitimately be a starter in the National Football League, or do you feel he should be in his regular Swiss Army knife role?
I mean, if you have a solid answer at the quarterback position that's not named Taysom Hill, I think he's best being a Swiss Army knife.
Right.
You know what I mean? The thing about quarterbacks, when they get that opportunity to be a starting quarterback for a franchise, most quarterbacks, unless you're newly drafted into the National Football League, you have some experience.
Right.
I mean, the first experience that Taysom Hill got happened last year because of an injury.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, what kind of quarterback I think he could be, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
We never seen Taysom start 8 games as a quarterback. We never see him start anything close to a full season.
Right.
But he has a unique skill set. Mm-hmm. His athleticism makes him a potential success at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
But Taysom is a physical player. And one thing that I saw last year when he became the starting quarterback, he didn't take that physical nature away from him. He still played with the same mindset that he's done his entire professional career. Can he do that for 16 weeks? Because see, the only knock on the competitor, the competition for Taysom, to say the least, and Jameis, is turnovers.
Yeah.
That's the only knock on Jameis.
Yeah.
Is if Jameis can just take away half of the turnovers from that 30 for 30 year, outstanding year.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like about the current situation for both players, Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston in New Orleans, you're dealing with one of the more respected offensive minds, quarterback minds in the National Football League in Sean Payton.
Yeah, true.
And Sean Payton's track record speaks for itself. I mean, if you listen to what he's telling you to do, you can go out and get paid like Teddy Bridgewater.
Yep.
Don't go out and do more than what is asked of you. And that's similar to what Taysom did when he jumped to the lineup. So to answer your question, what kind of quarterback I think he can be, the jury is still out because we saw a very, very small sample size for him in Taysom Hill last year. But hopefully it's more of a normal offseason where you can kind of see these guys get on the grass more so in the offseason and leading up to training camp to kind of get a wind on who's looking comfortable, who has a decent vibe with the offense. And I think that would determine who will be the starting quarterback.
Yeah, look, I think people are like putting way too much stock in the fact that Taysom Hill, played over Jameis Winston. A lot of people aren't realizing that Sean Payton already agreed and told Taysom when he was negotiating a new contract that if something was to happen to Drew, that he would actually give him opportunity to be a starter. And he relayed that message to Jameis as well. And you got a lot of people that they're saying, well, if Jameis is that good, then why didn't he start over Taysom? But they neglect to inform people about that. I really feel like Jameis Winston is going to be the starter to me. I think that Taysom should serve, be in that Swiss Army knife role. And I think he should embrace it, B-Mac, because there's not a lot of teams that are going to give you these opportunities if you're a quarterback. Teams like to run one quarterback out there. They don't like to disrupt the rhythm of that quarterback. So the fact that Taysom Hill can actually be on the field and be an actual football player and also get opportunity to throw the ball in certain situations, I think this is the best of both worlds. And I think he needs to embrace that, no doubt about it. But I believe in Jameis. I think the word you used a few minutes ago was an outlier. I just feel like that 30 for 30 was an outlier. If you look at his stats, from the time he got into the league, I mean, he always had like double-digit interception, but it was always in the teens. And it's kind of scary that if you look at his stats, up against Drew Brees when he was in San Diego, they're almost virtually identical for the exception of that 30 for 30 the season that he had. The next question is about the NFL draft. The New Orleans Saints, they had to due to cap issues, they had to get rid of Janoris Jackrabbit Jenkins, who I feel like really played really well for the New Orleans Saints. And there's a huge void at that number 2 cornerback spot. There's a lot of good cornerbacks out there, B-Mac. You were balling in your day, So what cornerback do you see out there that you feel like would probably be there at that number 28 position or somebody maybe the Saints could aggressively move up in the draft to try to acquire?
Well, right now, my opinion, when you look at the corners that are available, you got a traffic jam of light players. They're in a traffic jam.
Right.
Those players are Caleb Farley, Pat Surtain Jr., and J.C. Horn.
Right.
They're pretty much neck and neck in my opinion, based on their collegiate film and how well they played on the college field.
Right.
So those 3 guys probably will all be off the board by pick 18.
Okay.
Could be pick 16.
All right.
So now the second tier of corners start to surface.
Right.
Now, if you're talking about the New Orleans Saints trying to trade up to go get one of those guys, they may cost them because, like you said, the Saints are picking 26. 28. So for you to get into the mid-teens, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. But a player that could be available, now it determines if there's a big run on cornerbacks, but a player that could be available is a guy that played at Florida State, and Asante Samuel Jr.
Yeah.
He just had his pro day this week. He ran in the 4.4s. A feisty physical player, loves the game of football. I broke down his game on CBS Sports HQ, and I said he reminds me a lot of Jair Alexander.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And Jair Alexander, I don't want to say he's one of the best kept secrets in the NFL at the cornerback position, but for some reason his name gets left out of the conversation of some of the top corners in the game.
Yeah.
He doesn't get his just due, and he puts up numbers and he balls.
Yeah.
But Asante has that same style of play. You know, some people say he's undersized. I don't care anything about size. If you're a football player, you're a football player. It doesn't matter. But, you know, most experts and analysts, they always like to throw it at that size. Well, he's a bit undersized. Who cares? Barry Sanders was undersized.
Exactly.
Drew Brees was undersized.
Right.
Steve Smith, senior, undersized. If you're a baller, you're a baller. And that would transition on any football field. That would translate on any football field. But I think he's a player that can fit that mold. Right. You know what I mean? That the mindset defensively there in New Orleans is they already have Dennis Allen and his staff. You know, that physical nature, that feistiness, the feistiness.
Right.
And he tackles.
Yeah.
He tackles well. But I can tell you this much: you better have corners in that division.
Yeah.
Because you don't have no corners, man. You don't have no corners. Good luck. And you know one thing too?
What's
I
that?
wouldn't be surprised, depending on what happens. I know they're trying to fill a void. There's a void at the cornerback position. But going pass rusher.
Interesting.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I feel like they should go at corner B Mac is the same reason you brought up. I mean, this is a stacked division. There's some ballers out there. They got some really good receivers in the NFC South. And even if they weren't in the NFC South, this is a pass happy league. Like, you got to have 2 solid corners on your team, you know, on each side. Like, you can't have like it's not like a couple, you know, back in the day where you probably have a run dominant team but I mean, they probably weren't throwing the ball as much. Like, you got to have some corners. You got to have some guys that can go out there and cover. And I just feel like that's almost, you know, I won't even say almost. It is as important as a left tackle or your quarterback. You know, like, there's no doubt about that. But the final question that I have for you is about the NFC South. The New Orleans Saints, you know, they're losing Drew Brees. He's not coming back. He's retiring. Can the Saints still be a formidable team in the NFC South with the world champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers still being in the division?
Yeah. Now, you know, life after Drew Brees, it might take some time to get used to that. But if you can get efficient play at the quarterback position, you got everything else you want. You know, the structure on the offensive line. Right. I love Alvin Kamara. You know, you might hopefully get a healthy Michael Thomas. You know what I'm saying? Just think about how difficult it was from not having him in and out in the lineup consistently. Yeah. Defensively, you have to address some losses. You know what I mean? You know, you lost some key contributors from that unit last year. Being able to bring back Marcus Williams,
right?
Big move.
Yeah, that was huge.
I think he's probably he's probably the most valuable player on that defense.
That's a strong that's a strong point right there.
The reason why I say when I talk about value, it means you do a lot. You bring a lot to the table. You do a lot that you might not get the praise for.
Right.
He's the ultimate traffic cop in the secondary. He communicates. He gets everybody going and line up the right way. Not just in the third level guys, the second level guys as well with the linebackers. He's the ultimate quarterback in the secondary, and he tackles well. And each year he has improved. You know what I mean? So having him come back is a plus. But the makeup of the NFC South, you start and you stop that conversation with Tampa Bay. Right? Yeah. It's Tampa's division right now until another team says otherwise. Because to be the champs, you got to beat the champs. And I know the New Orleans Saints won the division last year. But Tampa got the ultimate goal.
Exactly.
And the unique thing about Tampa, and I spoke about this on CBS Sports HQ, you don't usually see championship team retain most of their noteworthy players.
That's true.
Usually when you win a championship, those good players that are free agents, they go elsewhere. They go chase the bag.
Right.
Brought back Chris Godwin, brought back Shaq Barrett, brought back Levante David. There's brought back Rob Gronkowski. They still talk with Antonio Brown, still talk with Leonard Fournette. But those guys that I mentioned, major assets to their team.
Absolutely.
And don't forget, you got Gronkowski last year, who just was retired and then decided I want to come play again, who didn't really get into football shape until the month of December. Think about that. Yeah. With that abnormal year last year, Tom Brady was basically cheating to get on the grass to throw football to his new teammates because of the restrictions. Because of that, one would think it might be a little more normal this year, so the continuity would be there. So that's why I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the top of the division. Now it's about fighting for second. And I know a lot can change, but I'm just talking about what we know right now. I think it's safe to say, even if you're a New Orleans Saints fan, and if you're going to keep it real and be honest with yourself, you would say right now Tampa Bay has to be the number one team in the division. Yeah. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think the Saints can still, be a formidable team in the division. But, I mean, you got to give credit where credit is due. I mean, they are the champs. And then until somebody knocks them off, I think that they deserve the right to, be the front runners for the division. I mean,
and front runners to win, to go back to the championship again, because that number 12 is hell. That number 12 is hell out there. That Tom Brady, man.
Yeah, man. That's bad business.
I think a fair spot, if we're talking about, just the entire division, the Saints being number 2, they still, got one of the best players in the National Football League in Sean Payton. The structure is there. Yes, you lost Drew Brees, but you got everything else you would want. You just got to find out who's going to be the quarterback, and will they be able to hold on to that job for the entire season? Because whoever comes out of camp as a starting quarterback, if they're the starting quarterback the entire season, the Saints will be okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you got to be moving quarterbacks and that guy ain't injured, but you're moving quarterbacks, it might be safe to say your team overall success might not be there. But whoever wins that quarterback job and they hold on it for the entire year, the Saints will be okay. Now it's an extra spot. You don't always have to win your division to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true.
What I mean? You know what I mean? It's not about ultimately winning your division. They added an extra spot in the tournament, and when you get in the tournament, anything can happen.
Yeah. No, it should be an interesting division. I mean, you look at Tampa, they're the champs. The Saints moving on, from Drew Brees. He's going into retirement. You have the Carolina Panthers, they still are relatively young. I mean, then you got the Atlanta Falcons, new coaching staff, new GMs. Should be a very interesting NFC South this 2021 season. But B-Mac, thank you so much for your time. Before you go, let everybody know about your podcast, All Things Covered with Patrick Peterson, and also just what you got coming up with CBS Sports.
Yes, sir, man. My podcast with my cousin, All Things Covered, part of the CBS Sports Podcast Network. You can find us anywhere podcasts are available. We also have a YouTube page. Just visit youtube.com/allthingscovered where you visually can see us. We've had some prominent guests on. Like I said, our most recent episode, we had Jameis Winston on. We had an opportunity to talk to Pat P, who played right there in the state of Louisiana at LSU. Talked about his free agency decision. We had Nick Saban on a few weeks ago. We've had Shaquille O'Neal, Odell Beckham Jr.
Wow.
Kirby Smart, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Jefferson. Man,
all-star cast up in it.
Jimbo Fisher, J.R. Smith. Man, we've had Tyrann Mathieu, another LSU former baller. So we've had some real good, unique, prominent guests. And like I said, we got maybe your starting quarterback for this upcoming season on join us on the show. So definitely check us out. And you always can check me out on CBS Sports HQ platform as well. Talking college football, talking fantasy football, talking betting, talking NFL football. My social media handle is the same for all 3 platforms: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. _sports.
Yeah, man, we definitely looking forward to listening to All Things Covered with you and Patrick Peterson, man. I mean, look, y'all killing the game right now. And we're looking forward to hearing that interview with Jameis Winston as well as other interviews in the future. B-Mac, thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you for having me.